for those newly freed enslaved. It opened up in 1866 and it stayed open until 2018, and it's this red brick building here on our left as we're approaching. Now it has been modernized over the years, but they say the only reason it closed was lack of funding, otherwise they'd probably still be there. There's a house up here on the right I have to show you. It's in a Victorian style home. It's a funeral home, which is cool, but I haven't figured out why. They've got bars on the windows. It looks like it's out of a movie set. That's why it caught my attention one day over here on this white one on the right. Check it out. Something about that house just draws my attention. Dorothy's Home for Funerals. Now, if you want to see a lien on a house, I got a doozy for you. This is probably the worst one I've seen in many years, and I believe people are still living there. I see them coming and going. It's this blue house on the right. Check it out. Someone didn't eat their Wheaties. Yeah, that's pretty creepy. I would think it is, and I imagine, I don't know, my Charleston friend might know this, I imagine the city's keeping an eye on that. They're going to soon condemn that thing or start charging them a penalty for not having it fixed, because I would think that would be a huge danger to the residents around them as well, you know, not just the ones inside.
Like you're walking around, you feel like you're drunk.
Now, I promised you guys a good story that comes out of the slavery. It's about a very brave man. His name was Robert Smalls. He's very well known in Beaufort, South Carolina. He was born into slavery in Beaufort, South Carolina. That's about an hour and a half south of here on the coast. And Robert Smalls grew up learning all sorts of things to do, trades. He worked in restaurants. He became a sailmaker. And he realized in his young adulthood that he wanted to be near the ocean. And somehow, during the Civil War, he ended up working on a Confederate supply ship called the USS Planter. Once on the ship, the officers began training him on the ship about everything. And they noticed that he picked up on things very easily. He was very intelligent. They liked him a lot. He worked hard, and they learned to trust him. So much so that they gave him the title of helmsman of the ship. Well, that was unheard of. Slaves were not really supposed to hold titles, but they did. And then in the middle of the Civil War, in May of 1862, on a planned stop in Charleston Harbor, the officers decided they were going to leave the ship with Robert Smalls and come over to the town for a night out. They told him he could invite some friends and family. The history books say that 15 people joined him on that ship. Now, Robert Smalls had made his plans, and he got his friends and family involved in those plans. He wanted to set them all free. And I'll tell you about that, but they were part of his plans. So on that fateful day, the officers left the ship. Robert Smalls donned his captain's hat, and his friends and family became his crew, and he began pulling the Planter out of Charleston Harbor. They boarded the ship with dynamite. They decided that if they were caught, they knew they would be killed immediately, so they figured they'd rather die by blowing up the ship and take it down with them. So they began pulling the Planter out of Charleston Harbor. Robert Smalls knew all the checkpoints, the hand signals, the lighting. He got away with it. They probably didn't suspect a thing. And it took many hours to get out of Confederate waters, but they eventually made their way up to Union territory. They say his wife, he was married, was sewing pieces of white fabric together to have it ready to wave so they would know they were coming for surrender. And they made their way up to Union territory, where they relinquished the ship to the Union, and everybody was freed, and Robert was paid a reward for that ship. He actually went on to serve in the Union Navy. He also served in the U.S. Army, and in 1884 he was elected to Congress and served 5 terms. When Robert retired, he was a decorated officer, and he decided he wanted to go back to Beaufort and buy his childhood home. But when he got there, he found out that the owner of the home owed a bunch of back taxes on the house that he could not pay, but Robert could, so he paid off the taxes and bought that house. And he moved his family with him. By this time he had a wife and 2 kids, and his mother was still alive, and he took her with him as well. And they lived the rest of their days out in Beaufort in his childhood home, free. That's a brave man. Can you imagine how surprised the Union was to see that Confederate ship coming up towards them with 16 slaves? Crazy. This neighborhood is where most of the slaves ended up settling when they were freed in Charleston, and you'll notice some modern buildings, and you'll notice some homes that have been restored quite nicely, and then some you can tell were built in the early 1900s and then maybe earlier, and they're not doing so well. And I'm going to show you a house up here on the left we're about to pass by. It's in really bad shape.